Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of the graph editor tutorial for Adobe After Effects CS6. In this part of the tutorial we're going to be learning about the keyframes and the different types and how they affect the graph editor and how to manipulate the points in the graph editor. So what we have here right now is just a linear rotation, which means the speed doesn't change and it just goes from 0 to 360 at the same velocity. So I'll show you what that looks like real quick so we have something to compare the other things to. And you can see how it slides at the end, and you can fix that in the graph editor. So the first thing I wanted to do was change the end keyframe to an easy ease keyframe so you can see what it looks like. So I click on that, and then you can see a handle comes out at both the points here, and we'll do a ramp preview so you can see what it looks like. There's no more sliding, for one. You can adjust these handles here by clicking on them when the cursor turns to a black arrow and dragging. So when you have it up here, the graph editor, or the rotation, the rotation will start off faster and then end slower with the easy ease on there. If I move it down here like this, now it's going to be slower here than it was before and then faster at the end. So watch this. You see how it got really fast at the very end and flipped basically unrealistically. So that's that. If you want to reset back to a linear real quick, you can hold Alt and click on it, or you can go ahead and just click on the linear button while the point is selected. So if you want to bring a point back to a point that has a handle on it, a Bezier handle, hold Alt and click on the point, and it'll bring a handle out that you can manipulate if it doesn't already have one. So now I'm going to add a keyframe in the middle somewhere. Right there sounds good, right at the top. And I'll add a keyframe in, and you notice that a keyframe has been added in the graph editor also with handles on the end. If you try to drag a handle, you can see only one will drag at a time. This is kind of weird, so just pay attention a little bit on this. If you hold Alt, you can drag them both at the same time. If you let go, now you can also drag them without holding Alt now. If you hold Alt and try to drag now, it will break the handles, so you can move them on their own. So I'll just repeat that real quick. Dragging when you just created the point or just came into the graph will drag individually. You have to hold Alt and bring up the convert vertex tool here to be able to drag the handles simultaneously with each other in relativity to each other. Now once you have already dragged with Alt and you let go of it, if you hold Alt again, it will break the Bezier. You can click and drag without holding Alt to move them both back again. Now if you click and hold Alt on the middle, it will turn it back into a linear keyframe. That's the shortcut there. So that is the end of part 2, where I showed you how to manipulate the keyframe points in the graph editor, and I showed you how they affected the velocity. I hope you guys learned something from the tutorial, and if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments, and I will try to get back to you and try to help you out in figuring out different solutions because sometimes when you're working with a graph editor, it just doesn't want to do what you want it to do. So be vigilant and don't give up on it. Just keep working through it and you'll figure it out eventually. If all else fails, you can convert your point to a linear point and just start over again and try to get what you're looking for. So play around with a graph editor, see what different animations do, and become a pro at it, because becoming a pro at the graph editor makes you a much better After Effects artist. So I hope to see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. It's Cinco de Mayo today, so I'll be out celebrating. I will use the Mexican influence there to justify my partying tonight. So I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. Hey everybody, welcome to part 3 of the graph editor tutorial series. Well, let's head on to this part of the tutorial where I'll show you another type of graph called the speed graph. Right now, the one that we have been editing in, it was called the value graph. When it auto-selected the graph type, it auto-selected the value graph for us. Now I can go to the speed graph here. This type of graph shows you how fast the points are changing rather than showing you their values. Now we can see that the speed of this graph, or the speed of this rotation, is 169.41 degrees per second. And then here at the end, when it's done, you can see that it stops down here. If you're above the 0 right here, that means that you are rotating clockwise. Now if I make a point, let's make a point at the end here. Let's make it actually right here. It auto snaps there, and we will rotate negatively, counterclockwise. There we go. Now we are below the 0 line here. And let's watch this real quick. See that? You can tell in the graph editor, again, above 0 is clockwise, below 0 is counterclockwise. So I'm going to get back to where we were before. Now to be able to see your value graph at the same time as a reference, you can come down here to the graph options here and click on show reference graph, and you can see your value graph right here, and it is not editable, so I can't select the point on it. You can just use that as a reference, so you can see when you're moving points, you can see how it definitely switches. It's grabbed way too many points at once. There we go. And you can see that the graph barely breaks. Let's move this point right here and see how it works. Do a ramp preview. And there you go. It's kind of like an Easy Ease, but done manually. See that? It's just another way for you to tweak your animations. And another way to edit your keyframe velocities, if you double click on a point, it will bring up the keyframe velocity dialog box. And watch as I edit this. To the left handle here, this is being edited as the incoming velocity, and the outgoing velocity can be edited also, which would be to the right on the graph editor. Let's hit OK, and you can see how it changed the velocity here. It breaks here so that you can see what's going on. I'll hit Control Z to go back. Edit, undo. Sometimes you have to go up and edit, undo manually because Control Z doesn't always want to work. So double click on it. You can also lock. So watch as they are together. You can increase the influence. So make this 100%, and you can see how much the Bezier handle is more out now, and it influenced that side more. So edit, undo, and that is going to be it for this part of the tutorial. On the next tutorial, we're going to go over position, because it has its own separate things that we can go over and figure out what's going on with it. The rotation is a little bit easier. The position gets harder because it has extra values like an X and Y, and then when you start getting into 3D, it's going to have a Z. So we'll get into that into the next tutorial, and in the meantime, you guys stay frosty and get your work done. Have a good time. Work hard, play hard. So see you guys later. Bye.